Don't get in trouble. I don't want to see you get in trouble. We fill a role of parent, of brother, of teacher. For many of them, we're some of the most positive influences that they have in their lives.
And as of 1981, the median income of blacks was 56% of that of whites. Over 50% of all black children are growing up in poverty today, and according to the social scientists, they don't see any way out for our children in the future. If black men are being systematically pushed out, how can a black man command the respect of a black woman when he has nothing in himself to hold on to? Look at what we're saying, brothers and sisters. With all of this going on in your state, you should welcome me like the return of Jesus Christ to this state.
Why do you think Farrakhan's so controversial?
What he's saying, I see that every day, and I see more about what he's saying. Like, he gives you more and more information about it. That's what you see every day, and you peep it out more.
America is the type of place where everybody wants to do everything together. Let's buy our cars, let's do this together, let's support our country. And if there's one person going against that, they're the person that's going to stand out, and that's what Farrakhan is.
Just write a little something in your notebook about what you thought of Louis Farrakhan in the context of what the Muslims want, what their program is, what their whole flavor. Thank you, y'all. Y'all have a nice day. Continue to do your research. Research. Research.
Unfortunately, sometimes they get the message that you shouldn't identify with America. You know, you are African, and you shouldn't take too many European classes. You know, you don't be American. America's always been for the white person. You want to be African. And then the kids have to go participate in this society. How do they do that when they've learned to become so angry?
I think the departments do contribute to a form of segregation, but I think that's part of, you know, developing an awareness and developing pride. And I think for the most part, you do that by being with people of like mind or like passion.
I think the only time there isn't segregation is the classes that have like assigned seating where they don't really have a choice. Because I think if the choice is given, it's going to be segregation.
I'm not sure if it can be resolved.
Do you have any questions, comments for him? When you have the ethnic studies department or African studies or like Asian studies, Chicano studies, where it's voluntary, then a lot of the like Chicanos go over there and learn about their culture and stuff like that. But I think that assimilation is also important because other cultures have to learn about you too, because you won't be represented in mainstream culture unless you have like the mainstream culture also learn about your values too.
I just think that before we can even learn about each other, we have to learn about oneself, and I don't think that that's even happening. I don't think that's happening also, because there's a lot of people. I mean, you can learn about every other race, but if you learn about your own race, then you know you can be lost, confused, or whatever.
If you have different people studying their own culture, then you don't have a melting pot, and you have a ghettoized America, and which ends up erupting, as you see now, as you see in Southern California, where you have the Mexicans studying only Mexicans and hanging out with only Mexicans, and that's why you need a common culture.
They're not studying.
Don't interrupt me. You need a common culture to connect all of these people. You need a common culture to connect all of these people, and that is the culture that is doing it. That is the culture that is doing it. That's the culture that connects Italians and Polish and English and blacks and whites and Asians, and that's why you have to study it.
Jim Henderson is Berkeley's 7th principal in 15 years. He spent most of his career in a predominantly white suburban school. 3 years ago, Henderson took on the multicultural challenges of Berkeley High.
The haves and the have-nots. For years, that's what Berkeley High has been. if you're in the haves group, you know, it's one of the best places in America to go to high school. And if you're in the have-not, you know, it's like a lot of places. It's just full of failure.
Overall, the school Henderson came to has always had a high academic record, with 80% of its graduates going on to college. Berkeley High has a very low dropout rate, but the dropout rate for students of color is twice as high as that for white students. And in the last few decades, the racial composition of the school has changed from 60% white to 60% non-white.
Gentlemen,
Sir,
you know our 7th period new rule?
I understand that you messing with us.
All right, well, you know, we gotta get things under control here. 7th period.
A lot of our staff really didn't understand kids of different races. And one of the reasons they weren't successful with them is they really didn't know how to teach them or how to work with them. And that was obvious to me, even though I didn't know.
We're talking about inclusion. And it's a very recent phenomenon.
When Henderson arrived, Berkeley's teaching staff was 80% white. In his first 2 years, Henderson hired 26 teachers of color, more than doubling their presence on the faculty.
If we ask people in the United States, is anybody racist? Most people in the United States, no. Anybody prejudiced? Nah. There are penalties for admitting to this stuff. And so we're taught, don't admit to it.
This year, Henderson organized prejudice reduction workshops, which were mandatory for all faculty and staff.
Chink, Jap, Nip, Gook, China doll, nigger, colored, negro, gal, whitey,
Cracker,
Nazi, hunky,
White bitch.
Violent, criminal, dangerous, hostile, loud, angry, have an attitude.
It's really clear to me that the Achilles heel at Berkeley High School is our inability to have harmony between races. And you know, that's translated in lots of different ways, but until we can solve that problem, I'm not sure we can deal with all the other problems, because every time we deal with other problems, it usually is based in the lack of harmony.
On Mexican Independence Day, the Chicano-Latino students stage a walkout, demanding more Chicano-Latino teachers and the formation of a Chicano-Latino studies department at Berkeley High.
Chicano! 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 And I want somebody to teach me about my gente, about my people, about my history. All right, it's fine to learn about European history, about everything else, but I also want to learn about myself. You know, so that's all I have to say.
What I heard is 150 people signed up for Chicano literature, and they only offered one class period. You know, 150 people signed up for self-defense class, and they offered 3 class periods. I mean, what does that show? I mean, when you're interested in learning and literature and that kind of stuff, I mean, that's what they should support. That's what sends us to college. This is our raza, this is our comunidad, you know? We have to keep it strong. Que viva la raza! Que viva!
Personally, for me, I think our Chicano Latino department, I wouldn't want it to be separated. I would want it to, you know, be with open arms for people of all races and cultures to come in, you know, and learn like we want you to come learn about what we have to offer and the knowledge that rests in our people.
If you actually look back, you know, in history, it says, you know, that your ancestral people discovered that they knew so much about astronomy. They were in advanced civilization. They built pyramids. You know, they discovered the concept of zero. You know, so I mean, it's not to put any other race down, but just so you can say, you know, I'm not no worse than any race. I could be better, or You know, I can be the same, but I'm not worse.
We gotta educate ourselves as raza. We gotta be one, not divided into, oh, I'm Mexicano, okay, I'm Chicano, I'm Latino, I'm this, I'm that. Bullshit. We're all raza. We're all united, okay? And we just gotta show this damn world that we are united. We're one, and we're not gonna get no one let us down. That's it.
Lots of people got mad at me for not going on the walkout. They kept asking me why and why I couldn't do that, and I told them that my education came first before any walkout. And then they would get mad. They would say, "Oh, you're not a Mexican American." They think I've sold out to their race.
Renato Casares and Alex Cusson were elected senior class co-presidents. Their two opponents were both African American.
Some people would ask me, "Why are you running with a white person?" And I would explain to them that he's not white, that he is Latino. He looks white. I mean, people just don't know that there are blonde, blue-eyed people in Latin America. And I just would explain to them, and then they would have a different view of him. And they would say, "Yes, I would vote for you guys." So it's all right. So 2 bathrooms in here are locked, and they look like they haven't been cleaned in days.
Dryers?
It's one of the things we promised during our...
It was a campaign promise. We called ourselves on it, so we wanted to do it. Just trying to make a difference. I mean, if we can't even get toilet paper in the bathrooms of Berkeley High, like, what can we do?
I mean, I'll write down some of the stuff that you say now, and I'll ask the head custodian.
But I mean, we don't even have to fix the hand dryers. Maybe we can just get paper towels. My brother has taught me a lot of things. He went through Berkeley High, and he knows how the whole system works. It's all about connections.
When I was in junior high, like, I used to be
No.
Thomasine Wilson has been teaching in the history department for 32 years. She also heads Berkeley High's Staff Senate, a group that is often at odds with Jim Henderson.
Okay. You dreamed all that is right.
I'll work on it.
I want you to get back to the point, the original point from which we have strayed. And that is your sense of how people in authority here, teachers, counselors, administrators, classified people you have to deal with, how they either make you feel okay about who you are or don't.
I think that teachers sometimes prejudge their students before they come into class. Like me being African American or black, I come into class and the teacher, like it's a new teacher, they assume that, well, she's African American, she's probably not serious. And then until you take your first test or until you take some kind of test in the classroom, they're going to think, well, she's not serious. You have to sort of prove to them that you're ready to learn.
I think it's very hard if you're not a person of color.
Exactly.
Were you gonna
exactly.
You're my soulmate over there, Ethan. And I'm not saying, scary, isn't it? No, listen, all right, you guys, hold it for a sec. And I don't want to lay a trip on white kids because I think a lot of trips are laid on white kids at Berkeley High School. But if you're not a person of color, it's sometimes hard to understand how people of color respond to situations.
I think here in Berkeley, I don't know if I should say this because I'm white, but from where I see it, from my friends see it, no matter what color they are, is that people tend to like racism here is a buzzword. If you say racist, all of a sudden you're right, and you're pointing the finger, that you can, and nobody questions that.
Do you understand that the way you look gives you steps up that other people don't have? Chris, do you understand?
I mean, I'm definitely biased, but from where I see society,
okay,
it's not like the oppressive system that's super racist on everybody. I mean,
okay,
the way I see it.
Okay, and you say,
what are you trying to explain to me?
We deal with some parts of our student body very successfully. And I'm talking here about white, upper middle class kids who have academic ambitions. We don't deal, I think, with our middle group very successfully. They're kind of lost in the shuffle. And here you have all kinds of kids represented. And I'm not sure that we deal with the ones who are suffering most educationally and socioeconomically and ethnically successfully. We're working at it, but I don't think that we've hit it yet.
Berkeley is a city of 100,000 people, historically divided by its geography. The hills are mostly white and affluent. Berkeley High, the city's only public high school, lies midway between the hills and the flatlands, home to most African American and Chicano Latino communities. A social geography that has changed little in the last 40 years.
Would have those. Only if somebody.
Remember, 1958 was before the civil rights explosion of the 60s. 1958 was before the Vietnam War. 1958 was the Eisenhower era. You weren't, as an African-American kid, necessarily expected to go to college. It was more about getting a blue-collar job. And, you know, remember, I was born and raised in Berkeley and came from South Berkeley. Yeah. The white folks lived in South Berkeley. It was against the law. There were covenants that would not allow blacks to buy property east of Grove, Martin Luther King in the 40s and 50s. That's right. That was real. There were covenants.
Don't you dare put me in this thing. I don't have anything. I mean, that is my view of going to high school. I never realized.
Do you realize that the only time we went to the hills was up Spruce to get to Tilden Park?
Well,
never stopping. And do you know that we would be nervous doing that?
Honey, if I did that, you could have come to my house at any time.
That shit's too late now. 35 years later, you tell me it would have been this. It was all right.
This is what we run with the formations now, okay? We're running with emotion. When nobody makes an issue of it, it's not an issue. You know, with all the polarization and the segregation that sometimes goes on at Berkeley High, our kids find a way to gel together. Team to team is always before the eye, before the individual. So we have a lot of black kids and white kids that hang out together. You know, walk home together, they do things like that together. Because good things happen when you're together, you know. Play as a team. Go! Go! There you go.
Like schools across the country, Berkeley High comes together during homecoming week to celebrate school spirit and unity. The high point of the rally is the announcement of this year's homecoming queen.
I was the first Chicana Latina ever in the history of Berkeley High to win homecoming queen, and I think that in itself is just a statement right there. I feel really proud, you know.
We'll be okay. We've learned. I guess you ache for the seniors, you know, because this is it. All right. All right. I'll see you in there, Joey. Jackers be back. 94.
Now let's drop it in the bow, up in the stern. Make it high.
Crewing itself is a prep sport. Majority of it is done by whites. The full payment for 1 year for doing crew is about $700. I think that's the most expensive sport in the school. They gave me a scholarship for last year and this year. They weren't used to having someone who's poor. They weren't used to that. I think that the way they viewed me was, you know, he's a kind of a poor kid coming up from the ranks and so on. I don't hang out with anyone, really. I'm kind of by myself, a loner in a way. There's the whites, there's blacks, there's Hispanics, we have everyone here. And it's a lot of, I mean, I got caught up, when I was a freshman here, I got caught up in a lot of fights and so on. And, you know, since I was white, it seemed like I guess I was a white student, I got to, if I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I got jumped quite a few times. That was frustrating. But it doesn't bother anymore. It used to instill a lot of hate in me.
Good. A 2, 3, 6. A 3, nail it. 1.
Now that I do a sport, I get my anger out doing that sport. I really succeed at that sport because I have so much anger and so much hate, but I direct it in a positive way at least.
Back and squeeze. 9. 10 is it.
You know, with my mother, she helped me a lot. Since my mother was Russian, I tended to have her views and more old-fashioned views, and that kind of clashes with those views in Berkeley.
I would say things happening now in education, at least in most public schools. I don't like it. Too much premeditated thinking, I would say, so it